Just to say there must something necessarily, whatever you call it, as a definite cause of the universe, doesn't have to be God. Now, the Kalam cosmological argument is set up in such a way into which it pretty much restricts only accept a divine personal being as being the only possible cause. That's the attempt of the argument.
The problem is that, historically, cosmological arguments only aim to prove that a necessary being exists. This is why you will find in the Catholic Encyclopedia the following statement. Finite beings are defined by their essence. God can be defined only by being, pure and simple, nothing less and nothing more. When cosmological arguments end with a necessary being, this is God irrespective of whether God is a personal being or whatever. Catholic Encyclopedia the following statement. Finite beings are defined by their essence. God can be defined only by being, pure and simple, nothing less and nothing more. When cosmological arguments end with a necessary being, this is God irrespective of whether God is a personal being or whatever.
I don't really see this as a disagreement. You're agreeing with me. I just don't understand how you think defining God is necessary somehow avoids the problem of special pleading. It could still be phrased that everything except God needs a beginning. Everything except God is everything except God. Therefore, God. I mean, it's still pretty much the same thing. I don't see how your definition here, or the classical definition which comes from Kalam, changes anything.
This necessary being must also be personal. So no, he's not just special pleading, he's making arguments.
Regardless if he's making an argument or not, if there's no sufficient reason to say that God is the only thing that is necessary for existence, i.e. eternally existent, then there is a problem. That's pure and simple.
3 steps of the cosmological argument and not realize Craig uses further arguments to substantiate the idea that this first cause, which was the only conclusion of the cosmological argument, is God. How do we know this? I just typed in Google Kalam cosmological argument William Lane Craig and read the first link. It's not that hard. In this article, Craig states, conceptual analysis of what it takes to be cause of the universe will recover several of the principal attributes of God, so that the cause takes on the character of a personal creator of the universe. What is it with you guys and not being able to just do a preliminary amount of research before asserting things to be the case?
That's what I said! What are you exactly debunking here? Because it's not clear anymore. What are you disagreeing with? Because apparently the reply that you just gave me makes no sense. You're agreeing with me.
Loves to talk about causes, particularly Aristotle, 4 causes, into which the material cause is present.
Yes, he talks about the 4 causes, but he doesn't specify which one is the one used in the argument. He is talking about a cause in general, so that includes all kinds of causes. Not to mention that ex materia only describes what the effect was made from.
Wrong again. He really does talk about efficient cause. And yes, I know about material causes just being the thing that it's made up of. What I'm explaining to you is that material causes and efficient causes are always together. And the only examples he can give are those precise examples, which makes the creation ex nihilo situation an impossible situation to demonstrate. But apparently you don't think Craig is talking about God being the efficient cause, so here's a clip of Craig talking about God being the efficient cause.
What does it mean to say God created everything, the world, from nothing?
I think we can understand this concept more easily if we recall Aristotle's distinction between different types of causes. Aristotle said one type of cause is what he called an efficient cause. An efficient cause is a cause that produces the effect in being. It produces the effect in existence. An example of this would be Michelangelo being the efficient cause of the statue called the David. He is the one who produced, who sculpted, who made the David. In addition to efficient causes, Aristotle said there's also material causes, and this would be the stuff out of which the effect is made. So in this case, the material cause of the David would be the block of marble, which was brought from the quarry to Michelangelo to sculpt. So that when you ask about the cause of the David, you would say that Michelangelo is its efficient cause, but the marble block is the material cause. Now, with that distinction in mind, the doctrine of creation is the view that God is the efficient cause.
Made it happen.
Exactly. Of all reality exterior to himself, and that there is no material cause of that reality.
There was no pre-existing stuff.
Exactly. In other words, it's a rejection of any kind of metaphysical dualism, that originally there was God and some kind of other stuff
which God
over
fashioned.
Against God, yes, which he fashioned or shaped into a world. Rather, God is the efficient cause of the world and everything in it. All matter and energy, space and time themselves have been brought into being by God at a certain point in time. So the doctrine of creation, again, would be the doctrine that God has brought everything other than himself into being without any material cause.
That's what he does, okay? And as far as what he can do, the only thing that he can do is continue to point to his exact same examples. Continuing to point, a table prior to T did not exist, then T1, the table exists. That's all he can do as far as pointing to empirical experiences. Now, if you want to go even more in depth, Theoretical Bullshit does a video precisely on William Lane Craig's four causes and how he's pretty much picking cherries. So,
but we cannot just say, as Theoretical Bullshit says, if we have not directly observed creation ex nihilo, we do not know if creation ex nihilo is necessary or even possible. And we definitely cannot say, because Theoretical Bullshit cannot comprehend it, it is impossible. William Lane Craig provides arguments for creation ex nihilo. How do I know this? I just typed in Google creation ex nihilo William Lane Craig and clicked the first link. I hope you're taking notes, by the way. Using Google is a skill people need to know nowadays.
Obviously, you haven't watched Theoretical's Bullshit videos. I understand it's an hour and a half content, but yeah, it's a little bit more than him saying, I don't know if creation ex nihilo is possible, so it mustn't be. I'm sorry, if that's what your take of his argument, I'm sorry, that's a straw man. I ain't buying it. You gotta do better than that. As for your Exhale Nihil link, I gotta say it's very underwhelming. The first 2/3 of it is all theological. Then when he finally gets to things I can actually care about and rebuke, it's an argument from cannot have an infinite past, argument that you cannot get to an actual infinity by summation of single things, and thermodynamics. Well, thermodynamics only applies to a eternal steady state universe, but nobody's saying that here, so that's disregarded. As for the other two theories, those are only conceptual ideas. But even so, if, like I said, you watched Theoretical Bullshit's video, you would have seen the part where he suggested that there is a legitimate third option, where there is an internal, a sort of like the eternal equivalent of the universe, a timeless form of the multiverse, whatever, and then it spontaneously rises to ours, making it an event. And this is completely fine according to William Lane Craig's own view. So, not that he mentions it, though, but not very impressed so far.
So, it is one thing to claim William Lane Craig's arguments are flawed, but it's an entirely different thing to ignore what William Lane Craig has actually argued and then make a straw man argument of what he actually says. Despite what Theoretical Bullshit says, if the universe began to exist ex nihilo, and we require a sufficient reason for things to begin to exist, then there must be creation ex nihilo. No, again, the Kalam cosmological argument only shows the universe had a cause. What that cause is specified by other arguments later on. The Kalam cosmological argument doesn't say the universe has some kind of cause, therefore that causes a transcendental mind. That's just not the argument.
Well, I already demonstrated at length that really is the argument, thanks to showing you William Lane Craig directly. So you're just full of it. You either don't understand the argument. I mean, for one thing, we're critiquing William Lane Craig's version. And that's exactly the point. So if you want to say Mortimer fails at debunking William Lane Craig, then stop going back and equivocating to the earlier version. Okay?
That explanation only applies if we're using Mortimer's definition of cause, which I am not. Neither is William Lane Craig. Even in his example,
I think you're just trying to get away with something here, because I don't see any reason what he's talking about cause could be substantially different from what either what you say or what William Lane Craig says. We know it. It's not a difficult concept, or he's not doing anything different that I have ever seen. So you're going to have to do more than that.
he is not saying the universe popped into existence for no reason. He's saying that the laws of physics require the universe to pop into existence. That would be a sufficient reason, so obviously that does not contradict the Kalam cosmological argument. However, to say this means God is not necessary ignores the argument from contingency, which is one of the arguments William Lane Craig uses to argue that things like Hawkins' explanation for the existence of the universe is not a sufficient reason as to why something exists rather than nothing. This is why there's the same objection to Lawrence Krauss whenever Lawrence Krauss claims that his argument says something comes from nothing, because William Lane Craig uses the argument from contingency to argue that the first cause of the universe must be God. But this would require you actually typing in Google something like Stephen Hawking, William Lane Craig, and clicking the first result.
Now you're out of date and hopelessly confused. It would be pointless to look up anything about Stephen Hawking on his particular theory, because that's not the theory that William Lane Craig is going to mention, which Stephen Hawking no longer holds to. But regardless, even his critique, I don't think it applies to anything that could be said. If you just said that Mortimer's, the way he said that the laws of the universe require the universe, or the laws of physics require the universe to come into being, then what do you think Lawrence Krauss has actually propagated? Yeah, the exact same thing. So I don't think you understand Krauss's objection. So let's move on.
First, technically, if by the universe you mean a collection of everything in this space-time, then we are not talking about the universe requiring a cause to exist. We are talking about some prior state, usually referred to as a singularity, requiring a cause, at least as far as the cosmological argument goes.
That's the same thing. Why would the singularity be different than everything in this space-time? Because apparently, according to what science is, everything that we know about was in that singularity. And even so, requiring a cause for the singularity is quite different than requiring a cause for the singularity to come out ex nihilo. It's quite different. But hey.
Secondly, I could use this argument against you. I could say, just because I began to exist and require a cause, that does not mean other things we have not observed beginning to exist requires a cause.
No, it's still about the fallacy of composition. The parts of a thing don't necessarily mean that the whole thing has the same properties. Just because planets and stars may have come into being with a definite cause does not mean that the singularity has also. At least not in the same way that we understand it.
That would mean, for example, when a scientist looks at a new sample and tests the pH of that sample. If he had not observed hydrogen being caused to exist, he could not really know if the pH levels were affected by hydrogen atoms popping into existence for no reason whatsoever.
This is really a relevant point. I don't think Monomer is talking about things coming into being, popping out of nothing for no reason. I'm not talking about that. I don't really see the point.
It seems quite arbitrary to say the singularity may not require a cause, while saying things like hydrogen atoms do require a cause. This principle is really just self-evident and applies to everything insofar as it exists. To say something exists for no reason whatsoever is the same as not to give an explanation at all. I'm asking why something exists, and your answer pretty much is equivalent to saying just because. That's not an answer, nor a real explanation.
Well, when you start talking about efficient causes without any material to act on, yeah, that's going to be a real humdinger for you. But we don't have to buy into that. Sorry, I don't care what you say. You cannot force me to accept the proposition of ex nihilo of actually being logically consistent, because it isn't. Please explain to me an efficient cause without a material cause. If you can't do that, then my point is sustained.
Okay, what is the sufficient reason for quantum vacuum fluctuations?
No.
Now, don't give me the quantum answer, which is probability, because that's the actual answer. Because that's not a sufficient reason. You can only describe that probabilistically. So you actually need to develop a classic physics answer to a quantum physics problem.
Oh, I do not need a classical physics explanation. Saying that things like radioactivity happen probabilistically is not to say they happen for no reason.
Well, then it's time to get to brass tacks, because something happening because of no particular cause is completely different from having no reason, isn't it? So, radioactive decay, quantum fluctuations, these are examples of things which have no direct cause. When you think of cause, when you're talking about an efficient cause, these things don't have an efficient cause. They just happen probabilistically. That's the point. It's an example of things happening without cause. And since the quantum singularity, since we want to talk about that, was at the was at the quantum size, maybe quantum mechanics will have something to do with that, wouldn't it?
If that were the case, then everything would occur probabilistically. But this behavior of virtual particles popping in and out of existence probabilistically, for example, is constrained to virtual particles. Hence, Edward Fesser states, an interpretation of quantum mechanics that is both Aristotelian and realist will naturally insist that it is not the laws of quantum mechanics themselves that cause anything, since they are mere abstractions from concrete systems operating in accordance with their substantial form. Hence, it is in virtue of the substantial form of a hydrogen atom that it will behave in the manner described by quantum mechanics, just as it is by virtue of the substantial form of material things in general that they will exert a gravitational attraction on one another. Now, for the Aristotelian, the substantial form of an inanimate substance is not the efficient cause of its natural operations. Rather, those operations flow spontaneously from it, precisely because it is in the nature of the substance to operate in those ways. I will leave a link to his page as it gives a more thorough treatment than is justified here, as this was not even Modern 81's objection.
Here you go agreeing with me again. You got a nasty habit of that. Yeah, notice the last sentence there, for the Aristotelian, for the efficient cause. He says they don't happen. There's no efficient cause for a quantum event. Exactly my point. There are things which do not have efficient causes. So that kind of puts a little crowbar into the argument, doesn't it? Yeah, I know it's not Mortimer's precise. He didn't precisely use that quantum fluctuation example, but I think it's still in the same vein.
Your problem is that you have failed to look for the definition, not that it's vague or because William Lane Craig has not defined his term. Again, do a simple Google search, William Lane Craig begins to exist definition, and click the first link for that definition.
Oh, for Pete freaking sake, you even record me giving an example to which it perfectly goes to this. E comes into being if and only if E exists at T, or 2, T is the first time which E exists, and there is no other state of affairs to which E exists timelessly, and V, the existing at T, is a tensed fact. Like my example with the table. It perfectly conforms to that, so you cannot say that I didn't know this. Jesus Christ. But if you're just going to go that route and say, well, look what William Lane Craig says. Okay, beginning to exist. Okay, well, let's review the facts. Did Mortimer make an argument against something like this? Oh, yes. I recall him saying that you can't talk about things north of the North Pole, and that it doesn't make sense. Yeah, remember that?
I'm not sure where you're getting this from. As William Lane Craig states here, atheism is not an implausible worldview, and that therefore the poverty of atheist argumentation cannot be written off to the bankruptcy of atheism itself. In my experience, it seems rather to be due to simple ignorance of the literature.
First, I find it ironic that you're quoting from the same source that I gave you last time, and you forced me to pretty much quote now in this video, or earlier on in this video. So I find it quite ironic that you are chronically ignorant of what Craig actually says and argues for, or chronically misrepresent, and then say that we ought to research that. No, that's kind of ironic, isn't it? Further, I get it from Craig. So it's not surprising that he would be speaking out both side of his mouth.
If the price of denying the argument's conclusion is denying premise one, then atheism is, I think, philosophically bankrupt.
That can only happen in a theory of time. But since we know that relativity is true, that implies a B theory of time.
I think the B theory of time could still be used with this principle, but whatever. That would be a different argument, and all I'm pointing out is that Mortimer 81's objections to the Kalam cosmological argument are just really bad and have not done the research necessary to debunk the argument. So, thanks for watching.
Okay, let's sum it all up. Well, first you say that William Lane Craig is just talking about causes and not about any particular cause. Well, I just showed you he is talking about the efficient cause of ex nihilo. So you got that wrong. And then you mentioned that he gets the definition of God wrong, and you never really explained that. And you pretty much agreed with me, not realizing it, on almost every point. So, now considering all of your previous bad arguments, I'm not sure if this actually is the worst of them, but it's pretty darn close, because like I said, it is fatal. As far as the B theory of time and relativity, I think you should trust Craig on this, because he himself says that B theory of time is tenseless. If a B theory of time is tenseless, then simultaneous events do not occur. And this is pretty much the same with relativity. You have to take a look at relativity. Relativity does not say that what may be simultaneous in one frame of reference may not be simultaneous in other frames of reference. So that puts a wrench in the gears right there.